The sky above the shattered planet of Tharun was stained black with smoke and plasma fire. From the trenches carved deep into the crust to the ruined cities torn apart by orbital strikes, the war had been grinding for months. The locals, frail, four-armed beings called the Velthar, were barely holding the line. Their weapons were ancient, their leadership fractured. And their enemies, merciless insectoid Rayleigh, were closing in. The Velthar screamed, died, and begged for peace in the same breath. But no one answered. The galaxy had already moved on. Empires watched from afar. Federations held debates. Coalitions signed neutrality treaties while entire species were wiped from existence. Then the humans arrived. They didn't send diplomats. They didn't ask permission. They didn't warn anyone. They just dropped a single warship into orbit. It didn't appear like the others. No graceful curves, no neon blue peace beacons blinking. It looked like a slab of metal torn from hell itself. Jagged. Massive. Silent. Its engines didn't hum. They growled. And as it descended, every scanner on the planet screamed errors. The Velthar didn't understand it. The Rayleigh did. They froze. In the trench, Private Renek, a young Velthar soldier with one broken arm and a dying brother beside him, lifted his head to the sky and saw it. At first, just a dark outline, framed by the fires of atmosphere. Then the shape grew, filled the clouds, and swallowed the sun. The humans had come. Down in the shadows of the eastern warfront, Commander Daryl Kane stood at the observation deck of the Axiom Vengeance. His face was carved from years of war, square-jawed, unshaven, with a scar across his left cheek that never quite healed. He didn't blink as the view shifted from high orbit to battlefield detail. The destruction was obscene. Children's bodies. Burnt-out hospitals, civilians used as shields. The Rayleigh weren't conquerors. They were exterminators. He clenched his fist. Behind him, his operations officer, a quiet woman named Rayla, spoke without turning from the console. Targets locked. Local life forms unable to defend. Protocol suggests engagement now. Kane didn't answer. He wasn't thinking protocol. He was thinking about Terra, about the last message from Outpost 17 before the Rayleigh burned it down, killing every last human in it. He exhaled, slow. Burn them. On the surface, the Rayleigh's front line collapsed in seconds, not from gunfire, from presence. From the sound of the warship's engines, from the gut instinct every species develops when a predator enters the field. And then, the dropships came. They weren't sleek, they weren't shiny, they looked like shipping crates with thrusters, but they hit the ground like gods hurling thunder, and when the hatches opened, humanity walked out wearing matte black armor, covered in the dust of war and the blood of older battles. No slogans, no chants, no mercy, just orders. Secure the zone. No survivors. Renek watched in awe as a human soldier, towering in comparison. Faceless behind a dented helmet, stepped over a pile of burning Rayleigh corpses like they were trash. The rifle in his hands hissed, then spat white-hot plasma. Another Rayleigh exploded in a puddle of limbs and acid blood. The humans didn't celebrate. They didn't pause. They just moved forward, precise and unstoppable. The galaxy froze, not just on the Rune, but across star systems, in every command center on every pirate ship, in every neutral council room where smug aliens once scoffed at Earth's chaos and primitive tech. Feeds went silent. Analysts replayed the footage in shock. The warship, the landing, the methodical, soul-crushing silence of humanity's march. One broadcast leaked out from a dying Rayleigh comm channel before it went dark. Do not engage the Terrans. I repeat, do not engage the Terrans. You will die. Down on the planet, Kane stepped out of his own transport and looked at the ruins with calm hatred. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't justice. It was something older, colder, a warning. He walked through the ash, past shattered bones and whispering winds, and whispered to himself, "They never learn." The scorched earth of Tharun cracked beneath Kane's boots. Every step kicked up dust and fragments of things that used to matter, pieces of toys, old weapons, melted bones. He paused near a crater where something that once resembled a Velthar child had been reduced to shadow and ash. His jaw tightened. "Commander Kane?" Rayla's voice came through his earpiece, calm, mechanical. "Rayleigh movement detected in the southeastern quadrant. 3 clicks out. Estimated squad size, 40. Mixed infantry. Orders?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the skyline, caught in the black silhouette of his own warship hovering like a curse above the planet. It wasn't beautiful. It was terrifying. And that was the point. Humanity had learned that in this galaxy, beauty didn't earn you respect. Only fear did. "Send in Reaper team," he said finally. "No survivors." "Confirmed." He looked to his left. A squad of Terran soldiers moved with silent precision through the ruined streets. There were 6 of them, each in matte black adaptive combat armor, their faces hidden behind visors that read thermal, EM, and enemy IFF data in real time. Their leader, a man called Harlow, gave Kane a nod and raised a hand signal to his team. They disappeared into the fog like ghosts trained in hell. Kane didn't follow. His role wasn't in the squads anymore. That part of his life was over, or should have been. He reached the outskirts of what had once been a Velthar marketplace. The columns were collapsed, and tattered blue flags fluttered weakly in the heated wind. He passed a pile of Rayleigh corpses, ripped apart, still smoking. Human rounds didn't just pierce. They burned, shredded, and corrupted at a molecular level. That was Earth tech. Brutal, efficient, designed not for combat, but for finality. Further ahead, a single Velthar survivor was limping through rubble, his skin blistered, one arm missing. The alien stumbled, fell, and tried to crawl. Kane didn't look away. The Velthar spotted him, this towering Terran in full combat rig, flanked by 2 drone scouts floating silently overhead. He tried to speak. "A human, help!" Kane crouched beside him. The alien's blood was purple and thick, pouring from the stump of his severed arm. Kane stared at him. "Name?" The Velthar coughed, then winced. "Vivora, citizen. I'm not a fighter." "Neither was my daughter," Kane said coldly. "She bled out in her school when the Rayleigh launched kinetic rods into civilian zones. You want me to care you're not a fighter? Wrong species, wrong war." Vora's trembling increased. I didn't ask for this." Kane leaned in, his voice low and sharp. "None of us did. But the moment your species let them take root on your soil, you made your choice. And now, humanity's cleaning up the mess." He stood, left the Velthar lying there, and kept walking. Far above, orbiting Tharun in the command chamber of the Axiom Vengeance, General Hodrick watched the live combat feeds unfold on a wide tactical holomap. Dozens of red markers, Rayleigh positions, were blinking out every few seconds. Small green icons, Terran squads, moved like predators, silent, precise. Admiral Thorne stepped beside him, arms folded. They didn't expect this kind of response. "They never do," Hodrick replied. "They think of us like some primitive pack of apes with tech we stole." "Well, they're half right." Hadrick's lips twitched. "Yeah, except we didn't steal it. We built it after they burned our colonies and bombed our moons. We built it after they wiped out the Sol Accords. Every life they took made us harder, Smarter, more ruthless. Thorne nodded slowly. Commander Kane's on the ground. I know. That wasn't my call. You don't agree with it? I'm not paid to agree, but putting a man like Kane back in the dirt. He paused. That's letting a war dog off his leash. Sometimes that's exactly what we need. Back on Tharoon. In the southeastern war zone, Reaper Team was already knee-deep in blood. They hit the Rayleigh like a shadow bomb. The bugs never saw them coming. Human cloaking wasn't optical. It was thermal distortion, EM scrambling, sound suppression. You couldn't see a Terran Spec Ops unit until they were already shooting you in the face. Harlow signaled with 2 fingers. His team spread out through the bombed-out remains of a Velthar factory, now crawling with Rayleigh troopers rearming and fortifying. They were laughing, if the sound their mandibles made could be called laughter. Then the first Rayleigh's head exploded. Plasma round straight through the ocular dome. By the time the rest turned, Reaper Team had already dropped 3 more. The squad moved like a machine. Clear, shoot, shift. Clear, shoot, shift. The Rayleigh fought back, screeched orders, sprayed acidic rounds. Harlow took one to the shoulder. Armor deflected it, but the kinetic impact slammed him sideways. He rolled, came up on one knee, and fired a grenade round into a cluster of bugs trying to flank. Body parts scattered. A screaming Riley tried to crawl away, half its thorax gone. Another Terran, Callum, walked up and calmly crushed its skull under his boot. 15 minutes. That's how long it took to wipe out all 40, Harlow reported in. Sector secure, Rayleigh zeroed, no civvies. Kane's voice came through, cold and low. Proceed to next vector. Elsewhere, in a neutral space station orbiting the Amaran Belt, a Galactic Council emergency session was in chaos. Dozens of species, hundreds of diplomats, screens flashing with footage of Earth's warship, replays of human soldiers tearing through the Rayleigh like a plague of death. Ambassador Del Tuck of the Thrun Collective slammed his claws on the table. This is madness. Humanity has violated 5 interstellar laws of warfare. Councillor Rithari of the Zarathi sector shook his head. You're missing the point. This isn't a violation. This is a declaration. What declaration? Rithari stared grimly at the screen. That Earth is done waiting. Back on the surface, Kane approached a Rayleigh prisoner. It was bound, hands nailed behind its back with carbon rods, twitching from shock. Its chitin armor was splintered. Its mouth was still dripping green saliva. But it was alive. Barely. He knelt beside it. You were part of the unit that hit Outpost 17, weren't you? The creature hissed. I was there, Kane said. I got the message from my wife 15 seconds before she died. She told me what you did to the survivors, how you left the kids in a fire pit, how you peeled the skin off the medics. The Rayleigh chittered something in its guttural tongue. Kane smiled. It wasn't friendly. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small black device. You know what this is? He asked. No response. It's a Terran neural torch. It doesn't kill you, not right away, but it melts the pain centers of your brain one at a time while keeping you conscious. He leaned close. And I'm going to use it on every one of you I find. Then he activated it. The screams echoed for miles. The day passed. The Rayleigh lines shattered. Humanity wasn't here for occupation, not diplomacy, not peace. They were here to end it. Kane stood atop a ruined building, watching his men burn another enemy outpost to ash. The black smoke curled toward the warship still hovering like death's hand above the world. He lit a cigarette, took a long drag. Rayla's voice came through again. Commander, we've intercepted a Rayleigh retreat signal. They're falling back. Multiple fleets disengaging from the sector. They're running. He exhaled. Good. Do we pursue? He didn't hesitate. No. Let them crawl back to their empire. Let them tell stories of what they saw. Let them warn others. He looked up at the stars. Cold. Infinite. And now, watching. Kane whispered the words with no emotion. Let the galaxy remember why they feared the dark. The fire had barely gone out on Tharun when the galactic networks exploded. Screens flickered across planets and orbital stations. News anchors in velvet robes with metallic implants stuttered through censored footage, unsure how much they were allowed to say. Combat clips leaked faster than the censors could stop them. Human soldiers dragging Rayleigh corpses through the streets. Drones vaporizing entire buildings. Terrified Velthar civilians watching as humanity's machines hunted like wolves with no leash. It wasn't a rescue. It was domination. The headlines clashed violently. Terran Empire returns from the shadows. Human vengeance or genocide? Rayleigh routed. Is humanity the new threat? Some worlds cheered. Others began prepping defenses. A few just locked their gates and hoped Earth's attention never turned toward them. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Axiom Vengeance, Kane stared at the grainy holographic recording of his wife's last moments. Again, it was nothing but a voice log. No video. Just static between words. Kane, they're here. I've locked the door, but they're burning everything. I think they found the children's wing. There was a pause, then screaming, then silence. The message ended. Kane didn't blink, didn't flinch, just hit play again. And again. Rayla finally entered the command deck, her boots soft against the black steel floor. She paused behind him, unsure if she should speak. Kane, she said finally, there's movement in the eastern ruins. Not Rayleigh, something else. He stood, slow and heavy. Another alien cleanup crew? Not military, a scouting team. Velthar, no weapons. Civilians. Kane didn't respond. She waited. Then added, You should see them. The wind had picked up again, carrying dust and flakes of ash that didn't belong to any season. In what was left of the Tharun Eastern District, a group of Velthar emerged from hiding. There were 9 of them. 2 elders, 4 young adults, and 3 children. Skin blistered, eyes sunken, but alive. They had watched the human cleansing operation from cracks in bunker walls and shattered apartments. They had expected fire and death. But now they stood silently as Kane approached them, flanked by 2 Terran soldiers. One of the Velthar elders stepped forward. Trembling, he bowed deeply, then dropped to one knee. Kane narrowed his eyes. What are you doing? I am grateful, the elder rasped. I watched the Rayleigh kill my children. I watched them rip through our temples, piss on our dead. And I watched your kind do what no one else would. Another Velthar, taller, younger, stepped forward too. This one didn't bow. He looked Kane in the eye. You came not to save, but to punish, he said. And they ran, not because of mercy, but because of fear. Kane nodded once. Then you understand. The young Velthar hesitated, then asked, But what will you do to us now? Kane said nothing. Rayla spoke for him. We're not here for you. This planet was a nest. You let it fester, but you weren't the one spreading it. That said, she paused, then glanced at Kane. He answered coldly, Stay out of our way, or we treat you like them. There was no protest, just silence and quiet understanding. Later that evening, Kane sat alone in the belly of the Axiom, inside the weapons vault. It was cold, dark, and nearly silent. He sat on a crate of sealed plasma charges, his helmet resting beside him, his head low. A picture flickered in his hand, a cracked and dirtied photo of his daughter. She had been 7 when they killed her. Hair in crooked braids, missing 2 teeth. She'd once asked him if aliens liked cartoons. He had laughed once. Now he couldn't remember what laughter felt like. He was so deep in his thoughts he didn't hear Commander Reeve enter. "You're not sleeping again," Reeve said, leaning against the wall. "Rayla's worried." "I sleep when the job's done." "The job's never done, Kane. You know that. There's always another hive, another war zone, another burned colony to avenge." Kane looked up. "And I'll go to every single one." Reeve didn't flinch at the fury behind his voice. "I know. That's what scares the hell out of me." They sat in the silence for a moment. Then Reeve added, "You heard about the Council's reaction? I don't care what they think. They called us a rogue faction, said Earth's response was unmeasured and disproportionate." Kane's laugh was dry. "Disproportionate, right." "There's talk," Reeve said. "They might move to classify Earth as a hostile system. Blockade, sanctions, maybe worse." Kane's expression didn't change. "Then they can come. Let the whole galaxy come. Let them find out the same way the Rayleigh did." Reeve sighed. "You're not the same man you were on Outpost 17. I buried that man next to his family." Elsewhere, deep in the ruins of a fallen Rayleigh command center, an emergency distress beacon blinked weakly. A transmission pulsed out in fractured waves. "This is High Marshal Krez. To the Prime Hive. We were unprepared. They are not what the archives claimed. Human fleet is not just military. They are wrath." The transmission skipped as the dying Rayleigh commander bled from multiple wounds. He coughed a thick stream of acid-black blood and leaned close to the camera. "They have no fear, no diplomacy, no hesitation. Their leader, Kane. He is vengeance incarnate. You must prepare, or everything falls." Then the feed cut. The message was received. The Rayleigh Prime Hive watched in silence, and for the first time in recorded Rayleigh history, they hesitated. Back aboard the Axiom, a private briefing took place between Admiral Thorne, Rayla, Reeve, and Kane. The room was low-lit, cold, and carved from reinforced armor plating. Not a speck of decoration, only data. Thorne didn't waste time. "There's chatter. Coalition forces are organizing. They're calling it a peacekeeping initiative, but it smells like a military formation." "They're afraid of us." "They should be," Kane muttered. Rayla's voice was softer. "You don't care if we start another war, do you?" "I care if we finish it." Thorne laid out a map. "The next target is not confirmed, but intelligence shows Rayleigh ships falling back toward the Drogan line. Civilian populations along that border are being evacuated. The bugs know we're coming." Reeve folded his arms. "And the Council?" "They're planning a blockade. They think they can isolate Earth." Kane's eyes burned. "Let them try." But Thorne cut in. "No. If they blockade Earth, we lose our home, our families, our supply lines. This has to end before it escalates." Kane stepped forward. "You're pulling us out?" "I'm telling you to strike the heart," Thorne said, locking eyes with him. "One mission, one final burn. You take the Axiom, go straight for the Rayleigh Nexus. We end their leadership in one blow. No more war zones, no more slow grinds. Cut the head." The room fell silent. Kane stared at the map. The Nexus was deep. Far beyond Council-allowed travel lanes, it was a suicide run. But suicide was something Kane had already died for. He looked at Thorne. "Give me the route." In the dark of space, far beyond Tharoon, the Axiom Vengeance turned towards the stars again. Its engines hummed like a sleeping beast waking from a long dream, and as it vanished into the void, the galaxy didn't celebrate Earth's return. It whispered. It watched. and it trembled. Because the last time humanity went to war, it ended with fire. And this time, there were no chains holding them back. The Axiom Vengeance had already crossed 3 red-zoned quadrants, territory marked restricted by the Galactic Council, monitored by sentry beacons and roving defense fleets. But none of them had fired a single shot. They watched the Terran warship pass like it was a storm cloud rolling over a cemetery. No one dared challenge it. Not yet. Inside the command bridge, Kane stood alone, staring through the thick, transparent alloy that separated him from the stars. The void stretched endlessly. Cold. Black. Infinite. He didn't flinch at the occasional tremor as the ship's gravitational core corrected itself. He didn't sleep anymore. He barely ate. What little humanity he still had was starting to bleed out of him. Rayla's voice came over comms, but he didn't turn to look. "We're approaching the fringe of Rayleigh territory. No resistance yet." He nodded slowly. "They're waiting. They always do. Should I alert Thorn?" "No. Let them sit behind their walls. Let them listen to every rumble of our engines and wonder which door will break down next." She hesitated. "We picked up a council transmission. They've labeled us an extremist faction." "They always label what they fear. And Earth has officially distanced itself from your mission." Kane turned his head slowly. "What does that mean?" "It means this ship is rogue now," she said. "We're not just on our own. We've been disowned." Kane's expression didn't change. "Then we were never Earth. We were the ghost of what Earth should have been." Rayla didn't answer. She just watched him for a few seconds before signing off. He turned back to the stars. "If they're scared now," he muttered, "they should have killed me before I left Terra." 12 hours later, the Axiom dropped out of warp in a dead zone, sector G47. No stars, no signals, just cold. This was where the Council liked to lose things: weapons, enemies, truths. It was also where the Rayleigh had built their first hidden Nexus relay, a cloaked gate to their home system. Kane stood with Reeve, Rayla, and the navigation AI, looking over the map. "The relay's shielded," Reeve said. "We'll need to power sync the drive coils to avoid triggering the sentry net. Once we're in, they'll see us." "I want them to," Kane replied. "I want them to feel it when we break through the dark." Rayla zoomed in on the display. "There's something else. A Council beacon ship. Small, civilian, but close to the relay. Looks like a recon unit." Reeve frowned. "Spying? Or scouting for us?" Kane's eyes narrowed. "Bring it up on visual." The screen flickered, then revealed a sleek white and gold vessel, clearly Council engineered. Unarmed, but fast, it hovered quietly near the asteroid belt, half concealed in the shadow of a broken moon. Kane stared at it. Then his voice came low and quiet. "Hail them." A moment passed. Then a voice crackled through. "This is Council Monitor Vessel 12A. Unidentified warship. You are in violation of Treaty Law 7.4.9. Power down and prepare for diplomatic boarding." Rayla looked at Kane. "Orders?" Kane tilted his head. "This is Commander Daryl Kane of the Terran warship Axiom Vengeance. You will leave now, or be erased." The silence that followed was long. Then, "Commander Kane, we didn't think you'd actually go this far." Kane stepped closer to the comms mic. "Is that guilt I hear in your voice?" "It's warning. You're not just provoking the Rayleigh anymore. The Council is watching. Earth has denied you. You're alone." "I was always alone," he said quietly. "You all just took a long time admitting it." The line cut. The Council ship turned and blinked out of the system, fleeing without another word. Reeve leaned in. "That's the 3rd time they've backed off. No one's stepping in, not yet." They will, Kane said. But by the time they do, we'll already be knee-deep in Rayleigh blood. That night, the betrayal came. Kane was in the war room, mapping routes through the relay when alarms blared. Unauthorized systems breach, core access override, Deck 7 lockdown. He snapped up. Who's in the core? Rayla's voice came in, urgent. Engineering crew is reporting sabotage. Someone's locked them out. AI can't override. Internal security is frozen. Kane's blood turned cold. Reeve. When he got there, the core chamber was sealed. 3 Terran guards stood outside with weapons raised. Kane didn't hesitate. He grabbed one of the guards, slammed him into the bulkhead, and yanked the override chip from his belt. The door hissed open. Inside, Reeve was crouched over the reactor panel, hands deep in a hard-line interface, bypassing the ship's AI. Kane aimed his pistol. Move and I drop you. Reeve turned slowly. There was no fear in his face, just calm. I'm not here to destroy the ship. Then what the hell are you doing? Saving humanity from itself. Kane stepped closer, pistol steady. That's funny. I thought I was the one doing that. Reeve rose to his feet, hands raised. You've already gone too far. Earth isn't behind you. The Council is preparing a strike. If we hit the Nexus now, if we kill the Rayleigh leadership, we push the entire galaxy into a civil war. They started it, Kane growled. They burned our colonies, I know. But we were supposed to show them we were better, not become worse. Kane's finger trembled on the trigger. Better? You want better? My wife was crucified on a school gate. My daughter had to listen to it before they torched her alive. I know, and I wept for them. But vengeance doesn't rebuild worlds. It only burns more of them. Kane stepped forward, rage in every vein. You're under arrest for treason. I've locked the drive, Reeve said calmly. Only Rayla can override it now. I made sure it wasn't in my hands. Because I knew this would happen. Why? Because I loved Earth before it became this monster you're turning it into. The silence hung like a blade. Kane didn't shoot. He just said, take him to the brig. Later, Kane confronted Rayla in the observation deck. You knew, he said. She didn't deny it. Reeve told me, before we left the Rune, he said we needed a backup plan in case you went too far. Am I too far now? She didn't speak. Kane stepped toward her, inches away. Tell me, Rayla. When you saw your own brother eaten alive on Garson Prime, when your mother's lungs collapsed from the Rayleigh gas attack, did you think diplomacy would bring them peace? Rayla's voice was shaky. I just didn't want to become like them. He stared at her, then said quietly, we became like them the moment we let them live. 2 hours later, Kane sat alone again. He looked at the mission plan. Then at a sealed letter Reeve had left him, marked only with a single word. Before. He opened it. Daryl, if you're reading this, then you've already made your choice. I know you think this war will give your pain purpose. That burning the Rayleigh to the ground will bring your daughter back. It won't. You'll burn the enemy, but you'll lose yourself in the flames. And when this ship is the last thing left drifting in the ashes, you'll still be alone. You used to talk about peace like it was something worth dying for. Now you only care about what's worth killing. I'm not trying to stop you. I just want you to remember who you were before. Reeve. Kane stared at the letter for a long time. Then he burned it in his hand and turned back to the map. The Nexus was waiting. No warnings, no negotiation, no declaration. Just the shadow of a single warship sliding out of warp, covered in battle scars and silence. The Axiom Vengeance emerged from the void like a myth made flesh, drifting above a system that hadn't seen war in generations. The Rayleigh Nexus, a heavily protected cluster of 5 moons orbiting a black sun star, was the most sacred stronghold of the Rayleigh species. Their throne, their nest, their mythological cradle. And now, humanity had come to burn it. Commander Kane stood at the helm as the warship's cannons powered up. The energy readings alone caused Rayleigh satellites to fail. Groundside alarms began to scream across every hive spire on the largest moon, Recta Prime. Rayla entered the bridge behind him. Her expression was unreadable. "They're scrambling fleets," she said quietly. 16 war cruisers, 3 heavy swarmers, and planetary cannons going hot. Kane didn't blink. "Good. The AI suggests odds of survival are, I didn't ask for odds." She paused. "If we fire first, the entire galaxy will see it as an act of genocide." He looked out at the stars. "That's the idea." Down below, on Recta Prime, the High Brood Council gathered in its underground war chamber. The Rayleigh shrieked in furious tones, their mandibles twitching in panic, all 12 limbs quivering in shock. The lead strategist, Hive Master Gorge, stabbed a claw into the air, screeching through a translator. "We told the galaxy! We told them humanity was unstable!" The others snapped and clicked. "We underestimated them. We triggered them too early, before their decay was complete." Another roared. "We broke their bones and expected them not to sharpen them into knives." On the wall, a feed showed the Axiom Vengeance above them, silent and still, as though deciding whether to speak or to smite. Gorge snarled. "They cannot reach the surface. No Terran must set foot on the Nexus. It is sacred." Then came the alert. Drop pods detected, thousands of them, falling like black meteors through the clouds. In the skies above, Kane watched the storm begin. His soldiers, clad in advanced grav-drop armor, launched from the ship in waves. Each pod carried 1 warrior. No AI, no drone support, just blood and steel. He'd wanted it that way. "They took everything from us," Kane said. "Now we take everything from them." Rayla, still at his side, glanced over. "Reeve would have stopped this." "He tried. You locked him in the brig." "I let him live." She flinched at that, then whispered, "When this is over, what will be left of you?" He didn't answer, because even he didn't know. On the surface, the invasion began like the wrath of a forgotten god. The first pods slammed into Rayleigh hive cities, cracking reinforced spires like eggs. The soldiers inside emerged instantly, rifles barking, flamethrowers roaring, shockwave grenades vaporizing entire clusters of Rayleigh guards in seconds. The bugs were fast, furious, fanatical. But humanity wasn't here to conquer. They were here to exterminate. The first Terran platoon landed in Sector 9, the industrial heart of Recta Prime. Captain Varn, a grizzled ex-miner from Europa, led the charge through tunnels once used for egg transport. The walls shook from cannon fire above as his men carved a path forward. "Sector's dense," someone shouted. "They're flooding the tunnels with gas." "Doesn't matter," Varn growled. "Filter up, burn everything." 3 Rayleigh warriors leapt from the shadows, mandibles wide, acid dripping. Varn gunned them down without blinking. Another soldier activated his wrist drone, which flew ahead and exploded deep in the nest, sending chunks of alien flesh flying back in the wind. And deeper below was the Nexus core. Back aboard the Axiom, Kane watched the feed from his HUD. He was going down next, not because protocol required it, but because this was personal. "Suit me," he ordered. Rayla hesitated. "You're the commander." "Exactly." He stepped into the warframe chamber. The armor locked around him with mechanical precision. Black titanium plates, neural response implants syncing with his spinal cord, helmet seal engaging with a hiss. The AI flickered into his visor. Vital signs nominal. Weapons hot. Gravitational reentry, green. Rayla met him one last time at the launch gate. I won't stop you, she said. I know. But someone has to ask, why? Why burn their homeworld? Why risk this? Kane paused in the doorway. They called it a war, he said. But it was never war. It was a message. What they did to us wasn't about conquest. It was punishment. They wanted to teach us our place in their galaxy. He looked into her eyes. Now I'm teaching them theirs. Then he dropped. The descent was violent. His pod hit atmosphere like a bullet, flames licking the hull, wind screaming against the metal. Through the viewport, he saw the Rayleigh capital beneath him, millions of insectoid shapes scrambling across hives, anti-air weapons firing, even civilian tunnels flooding with defensive swarms. But it didn't matter. He wasn't coming to negotiate. His pod tore through a defensive wall and embedded in a plaza filled with Rayleigh high priests. They screamed. He stepped out and opened fire without a word. The plaza became a graveyard in seconds. Kane moved with machine precision, clearing corners, checking thermal readings, unloading round after round into anything that moved. His body was on autopilot, but his mind was on fire. Flashes of his daughter's screams echoed in his skull. Her voice, her last message. "Daddy, where are you? I'm scared." The rage came harder. He stormed through the Nexus corridors, black stone and green bioluminescent roots lining the walls, until he reached the inner sanctum. And there, he found them. The Rayleigh Queen brood. It didn't look like a queen from Terran mythology. It was long, fleshy, covered in black ridges and swollen glands, eyes clustered in a circular crown. It floated in a semi-liquid pod, protected by hundreds of guards. It turned toward Kane and spoke, but not aloud. It entered his mind. "You came for revenge." He raised his rifle. "You will not find peace here, human. You will find only emptiness." He fired. The rounds bounced off the mental shield. A wave of force hit him like a sledgehammer, throwing him across the chamber. "You lost your child." I know her screams. I remember the taste of her fear. Kane roared. And something in him broke. He lunged, not as a soldier, but as a father, a man consumed by something beyond war. He pulled a detonation spike from his armor, slammed it into the Queen's pod, and activated it. "You doom your species with this act." "I already buried my species," he whispered. "Now I'm burying yours." He dove back as the explosion ripped through the chamber. The Queen shrieked. The guards died in an instant. Acid and flame filled the hive's sacred core. Above, every Terran unit heard the blast and cheered. Back on the Axiom, Rayla stood in silence. The feeds had gone dark. "Kane's signal is gone," the AI said. Rayla's face didn't change. "Reactor destabilization detected. Hive collapse in progress. Recta Prime is falling." She whispered, "So, he did it." The bridge crew didn't speak. There was nothing to say, because outside, the Rayleigh fleets were retreating. Hundreds of ships turning away from battle, fleeing deeper into space, directionless. The hive mind was broken, their queen dead, their homeworld burning. Humanity had done it. They had shattered the most feared species in the galaxy. But at what cost? Rayla looked out the viewport and didn't see a hero. She saw a ghost, and for the first time since the war began, she felt hollow. Aboard the Axiom Vengeance, 3 hours after detonation of the Rayleigh Nexus core, the war room was silent. Not the kind of silence that brought peace, but the kind that follows a disaster so overwhelming the soul forgets how to speak. Rayla stood over the central holomap as red dots disappeared one after another, Rayleigh ships turning to vapor, Rayleigh colonies sending distress signals, Rayleigh civilian channels flooding with one phrase, translated in hundreds of dialects. The Queen is dead. The hive mind, the network that bound them together, had collapsed with her. The death of the Nexus didn't just kill their leadership, it shattered who they were. The species that once rained acid fire across colonies, that once laughed at Terran weapons, that once paraded human prisoners through marketplaces like trophies, was now crumbling, cell by cell. And humanity had done it. Rayla couldn't decide whether she felt victorious or violated. The bridge AI crackled to life. No life signs detected from Commander Kane's last known location. Local temperatures exceed survivability. Radiation spikes critical. Estimated probability of survival, 0.4%. She didn't flinch. She had expected that. But the part of her that still remembered the man before the war, before the darkness swallowed him whole, before the rage had made him more weapon than man, still hoped. Deep inside the ruins of Recta Prime. The dust hadn't settled. The Queen's chamber was a wreck of black sludge, broken organic supports, and cracked telepathic crystals humming with dying echoes. Smoke curled upward like incense from hell. And in the center of it, movement. A pile of alien resin shifted, then burst apart. Kane pulled himself free. Bleeding from a dozen cuts, half his armor shredded, one eye swollen shut. The explosion had thrown him clear of the blast, slammed him through 2 walls, and buried him in a decaying brood pit. He should have died. He kind of wished he had, but something in him refused to go. He stood slowly, bones screaming, lungs rattling, and looked around at the charred husk of the Queen's remains. Her body was still twitching, small fibers snapping with every spasm. Kane limped forward, leaned in. "Remember her voice, you bastard?" he whispered. "My daughter? You don't anymore, because now you're just meat." Then he turned and staggered out of the hive. Aboard the Axiom Bridge, 5 hours later. "Rayla, incoming signal." She whipped around. "From where?" "Ground level. From the surface." Static filled the speakers. Then, "Rayla, this is Kane." She froze. The entire bridge stopped breathing. "I'm alive! Barely! Got out of the core chamber. The Queen's dead. Confirm it. But I'm not finished. I need evac." Rayla reached for the mic like someone touching a ghost. "Kane, you're supposed to be dead. Not yet. What do you want us to do? Send a drop shuttle. No escorts, just pilot and medkit." She narrowed her eyes. "That's suicide. We don't even know what's left down there." "I do. I've seen it." "Seen what?" The end. 1 hour later, extraction zone. The Axiom's med shuttle dropped into a shattered crater on Recta Prime, scanning through toxic gas and broken metal spires. Kane emerged from the mist, staggering but unbroken. His armor was more blood than black. His rifle was melted, but his eyes were burning with something even the Rayleigh Queen hadn't managed to kill. He collapsed onto the shuttle ramp. The pilot didn't ask questions, just flew. Medical Bay, Axiom Vengeance. 12 hours post-rescue, Rayla stood beside his recovery pod. Kane was strapped in, sedated but half-conscious. IVs ran into his neck. Biofoam lined his wounds. A medical AI whispered soft vitals into the air. "Why didn't you stay dead?" she asked him. His eyes opened slightly. "I still have work to do." "You ended the war." "I ended a queen," he rasped. "Not the war." She leaned closer. "They're running. The Rayleigh are fractured. The galaxy is in chaos. Earth is in hiding. You broke everything." "Then maybe now they'll finally listen." "To what?" He didn't answer, just closed his eyes again. But inside his mind, he could still hear his daughter's voice, and it kept him awake. Elsewhere, in deep council space, the Galactic Council's emergency chamber was in uproar. Diplomats from the Vari clans screamed across the table at the Yovari emissaries, accusing them of funding Rayleigh tech. The Zarathi slammed their claws on the table, demanding sanctions. The human ambassador, nowhere to be found. Footage played on repeat behind them, the Axiom hovering over Recta Prime, the swarm fleets retreating, and the Queen's psychic death cry captured in echo waves. Someone finally stood. A small, gray-skinned creature with golden eyes. Counselor Trin. He raised one hand. Silence fell. We watched Earth burn. We let the Rayleigh make examples of them, and we mocked them for their grief. He turned to the room. And now they've made an example of all of us. Aboard the Axiom. 6 days later, the crew was split. Some saw Kane as a savior, the man who broke the monster's spine and gave humanity back its pride. Others saw a war criminal, the man who dropped a match on a species and walked away from the ashes like it was nothing. There were murmurs now, quiet meetings in maintenance halls, whispers of mutiny, of taking the ship back to Earth, of putting Kane in a tribunal. Rayla knew. She heard it all, and she also knew Kane wasn't sleeping anymore. He was preparing for something worse. Kane stood in the war room, alone. A single beacon blinked on the holomap. It wasn't Rayleigh, it wasn't Council, it was Earth. A message, recently decrypted. High priority. He played it, and his heart stopped. Daryl, this is Admiral Corrin of the Earth Security Command. I don't know if you'll even hear this, but if you're alive, God help us. They're coming. The Rayleigh weren't the top of the food chain. They were servants, scouts, meant to prepare the galaxy for something else. We've intercepted transmission fragments from deep void space. It's not in any known dialect. But one word keeps repeating. Consumption. Something's coming to eat the ashes. And now we've lit a beacon for it. If you're out there, you need to come home, not as a weapon, as a shield. The message ended. Kane didn't move for a full minute. Then he whispered, "Of course." Kane stood in the observation bay again, watching stars slide past like cold memories. The war was over. At least the one the galaxy had seen. Recta Prime was gone, reduced to a molten grave. The Rayleigh were fractured, a ghost species scattered across ruined outposts, choking on their own fear. But the war inside Kane hadn't ended. And now, another one was about to begin. The message from Earth had changed everything. They're coming. Not the Council, not the Rayleigh. Something else. Something older. He replayed Admiral Corrin's warning for the 10th time. Listened to the static-heavy fragments from deep space scanners, the garbled shrieks, the unreadable symbols, and the one word that chilled his blood more than anything the Rayleigh Queen ever whispered. Consumption. The Rayleigh were just scouts. Pawns. He had killed the Queen. But maybe all he'd done was clear the stage for something worse. Behind him, the doors opened. Rayla stepped in, her voice low. "We need to talk." Kane didn't turn. "I figured. There's unrest, crew meetings. A list circulating with names. Yours at the top. Let me guess. They want to go home. They want to survive. They will, if they follow me." Rayla stepped closer. "Some of them don't want to follow anyone anymore, not after what you did." He finally turned, his face a graveyard of exhaustion. "I didn't come this far to hand the wheel over to children who cry when the blood dries." "They're not crying. They're choosing not to follow a man who looks more dead than the enemy he destroyed." A long silence passed. Then Kane said softly, "You heard the message?" "Yes." "Then you know we don't have time to vote on leadership or morality. We're staring into something that makes the Rayleigh look like an infection. This thing that's coming, it doesn't want war, it wants everything." Rayla nodded slowly. "And you think you're the only one who can stop it?" "No," Kane said. "I think I'm the only one willing to pay the price." Deck 9, Barracks. Private Isaac leaned into the table, eyes darting between the others seated with him. Technicians, officers, gunners, and medics. "He's not the same man anymore," Isaac whispered. "You all saw the footage. He walked into the Queen's Nest and blew it sky high. Came back with a stare like he'd forgotten what sunlight is. Because he's a hero," one of the pilots muttered. "He ended the Rayleigh." "He didn't end them," a sergeant said. "He erased them. Their queen, their culture, their cities. That's not war. That's extermination. We all voted for this mission. We voted for retaliation, not genocide." Silence. Then Isaac said it. "We need to take the ship back." Meanwhile, deep void. Scanners activate the Axiom's long-range sensory array triggered, unprompted. The ship's AI switched to red alert protocol. Something had breached the edge of mapped space, past the Draff expanse, beyond the old Rayleigh border. No known warp gate, no signature. But it was coming fast, faster than light, faster than physics allowed. A signal burst pierced the system. Untranslatable data. Biological pulses detected. Mass, planetary. Term, reaping seed. The AI triggered a system-wide notification. Unknown entity approaching. Estimated contact, 48 hours. Command deck. Rayla slammed the report down on the table in front of Kane. "It's real," she said. "It's coming. Something massive. Something alive." Kane's jaw tensed. "How big?" "Planet scale. Bigger than the Axiom. Maybe bigger than Earth. And it's not sending standard warp signals. It's like it's burrowing through reality." Kane stood, pacing. "Where's it heading?" Rayla hesitated. "Vector is shifting. Right now it looks like it's headed toward..." She swallowed. "Toward Sol." Kane stopped walking. The galaxy froze when they came. Now Earth would burn, and no one would stop it. Unless he did. "We intercept it," he said. Rayla looked up sharply. "We don't even know what it is." "Doesn't matter. We don't let it touch Earth." She stepped toward him. "Kane, listen to me. We don't even have the crew. Half of them want to go home. Half are planning to remove you. You go to war now, and we might lose the ship before the first shot." "Then I find the ones who'll follow me," Kane said coldly, "and we put the others in the brig." Rayla's voice dropped. "That's not command. That's a coup." Kane looked her dead in the eyes. "Survival is a coup." An hour later, mutiny. The Axiom shook with internal sirens. Doors sealed, lights turned red. Crew loyalty had fractured clean down the middle. Isaac and 30 others made their move, attempting to seize engineering and lock out the command codes. They almost succeeded. Almost. Kane led the counterstrike himself. Helmet on, rifle in hand. No speech, no warning. The first traitor he found, he shot in the leg, then in the shoulder, then stepped over him without pause. By the time they reached the reactor room, 12 were dead. "Drop your weapons!" Rayla shouted as she stormed in behind Kane, her own sidearm raised. Isaac hesitated, his eyes locked with Kane's. "We were only trying to stop you before you got us all killed." Kane aimed his rifle. "You failed." Bang. Isaac dropped. The rest surrendered. Later, command deck bodies had been moved, blood cleaned, the ship's control was secured. Kane leaned over the command interface, hands gripping the edge. Rayla stood beside him, breathing hard. "You killed him." "He was going to kill Earth. He was trying to save it." "No," Kane said. "He was trying to save himself." Rayla stared at him. "You think you're the last good man," she said quietly. "But you're just the last man who doesn't care what good means anymore." Kane didn't deny it. He just said, "Plot course to intercept." The edge of known space. 18 hours later. The Axiom Vengeance drifted through the black, weapons hot, scanners pulsing. Then they saw it. The reaping seed. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even alive by normal standards. It was a floating sphere of flesh and iron, miles wide, covered in tendrils and glowing with white-hot eyes. It didn't have engines. It didn't need them. It drifted like a dead god through space, and everything in its path disintegrated: asteroids, debris, radiation clouds. As they watched, a stray Rayleigh refugee ship appeared from a blind spot. The seed fired a single pulse, not a beam, but a ripple of energy that bent light itself. The Rayleigh vessel didn't explode. It unraveled, melted from the inside out, reduced to static particles in a heartbeat. The crew on the Axiom stared in horror. Rayla whispered, "What the hell are we looking at?" Kane's voice came from behind her. "Judgment." The Axiom Vengeance hovered before a nightmare made real. The reaping seed pulsed with alien life. It wasn't alive in any way the crew understood, but it moved, devoured, and expanded like a living thing. Its surface was an ever-shifting mass of flesh-metal plating and glowing biological structures. In its core, a white sphere like a blind eye, unblinking, ancient, endless. The bridge was silent. Kane stood at the center, bloodshot eyes fixed on the thing that had made the Rayleigh look like scavengers. The seed had no face, but he felt like it was looking straight into him, not just at his body, but into his bones, his rage, his losses. It knew him, and it was hungry. Behind him, Rayla whispered, "It's not trying to communicate. It's not scanning us. It doesn't care." Kane responded, "It doesn't see us as enemies, just as fuel." Earth Command, High Orbit Defense Grid Transmission Log, classified. This is Admiral Karan to any surviving Terran fleet in range. We are preparing the last fallback line. Mars colonies are being evacuated. Orbital batteries are at 42%. The seed is now 7 hours from Sol. If the Axiom Vengeance is alive out there, we need you now. Or this becomes humanity's last sunrise. Aboard the Axiom Vengeance War Council. 5 hours until Intercept Kane stood over the table, armor half donned, chest plate hanging from one shoulder. "We don't have enough to kill it," Rayla said flatly. "Our railguns won't penetrate the outer shell. Plasma cannons? Maybe scratch the surface. It took out a Rayleigh cruiser with a single breath." Kane's expression didn't change. "We're not here to win. We're here to stop it, delay it, long enough for Earth to fire every goddamn rock they've got." Reactor Chief Morrow entered, face pale. "We could trigger the Singularity Core, blow it, overload the warp drive, collapse the space around us and pull the seed in." Rayla blinked. "That'd kill everyone on board." Morrow nodded. "And maybe buy Earth 2 more days." Silence. All eyes turned to Kane. He didn't speak, just turned, walked to the viewport, and stared into the abyss, then finally said, "Prep it." Shipwide announcement. Commander Daryl Kane. "This is your commander. You all know me. You've followed me through fire, blood, and silence. You followed me to the Rayleigh homeworld and back. You saw what they did to our people. You saw what I did in return. Today, we're facing something worse. Something without hatred. Without desire. Something that simply consumes. This is not a battle for glory. It's a message that humanity, beaten, exiled, betrayed, never stopped fighting. We are going to fly straight into this thing's heart and tear it apart, even if it costs us everything. Because that's what we do. We fight back. And when the galaxy writes its history, they will say this: the galaxy froze. When humanity's warship darkened the skies of extinction itself. All crew to battle stations. This is our final burn. 30 minutes to contact the Axiom. Vengeance roared toward the reaping seed at impossible speed. The ship had shut down external lights. Entering blackout protocol. No shields, no stealth, just raw engine power and weapons primed for full saturation. The seed didn't react. It simply pulsed in the dark, drawing in surrounding radiation like a dying star. Rayla sat in the command chair as Morrow prepped the reactor. Sweat covered his brow. "Singularity drive at 68% instability," he said. "Once we hit 90, we can't turn it back." Kane was in the forward weapons corridor, armor fully sealed now, his hand gripping the override detonator, a small metal cylinder with one red switch. Rayla came up beside him, quiet. "You could let someone else do this." "No one else started it," he said. "No one else should end it." She looked at him. "You wanted vengeance. You got it. Is this how you imagined going out?" "No," Kane said softly. "I imagined dying before they burned my daughter alive." The silence between them was heavier than gravity. Then Rayla asked, "Do you think Earth will remember us?" Kane turned to her. "No," he said. "But maybe they'll be allowed to forget." He handed her his sidearm. "Get to the life pod." "I'm not leaving." "You will, that's an order." "I don't take orders from dead men." They stared at each other. No one blinked. Then he gave her a small nod and walked into the core chamber. Final minutes. The axiom smashed into the seed's outer barrier. It wasn't a wall. It was like hitting a skin of nightmares. The ship shook violently, hull screaming. Exterior drones flew ahead, firing into the surface. Some rounds struck solid material. Others disappeared, dissolved mid-air. Rayla shouted into comms, "Now, do it now." Morrow confirmed. "Reactor at 92%. Detonator ready." Kane was already in the core, staring into the pulsing heart of the ship. He placed the detonator on the warp singularity coil and locked it in place. A message popped up on his visor. "Are you sure?" "Activating this device will collapse the Axiom's singularity core. Risk, total loss of ship result, unstable spatial anomaly." "Objective, unknown," Kane smiled. "Sounds like Earth." Then pressed the button. Impact. The Axiom Vengeance disappeared in a flash of silent, violent light. The reaping seed reacted for the first time, shrieking without sound, vibrating across dimensions, its core splitting open like a rotten fruit. Space folded. The seed collapsed inward, like it had never existed. Then, silence. True silence. And the black returned. Transmission. 72 hours later. Earth High Command. "This is Admiral Corrin. To all surviving colonies. The reaping seed is gone. Its signal vanished 71 hours ago. The Axiom Vengeance is presumed destroyed. No remains found, no energy signatures, no debris. But deep-range sensors captured a final pulse before the collapse. One signal. It was a human voice. Just 3 words. Tell her. Goodbye." Daryl Kane gave us 2 more days. And sometimes, 2 more days is the difference between extinction and survival. Somewhere, far beyond mapped space, in a region no scanner could reach, no satellite could map. A small escape pod drifted. Inside, Rayla sat, wounded, weak, but alive, floating in the dark. She held a cracked photograph in her hand, a girl with crooked braids and a missing tooth, Kane's daughter. On the back, it said, "Live like you'd give your life twice for someone else." The stars whispered nothing, but somehow Rayla knew. Kane had won, not by killing, but by giving everything. The galaxy never forgot, not the species that watched their gods burn, not the council that feared Earth's silence, not the broken Rayleigh remnants who still told stories to their children about the black warship that came when all hope was gone. They didn't call it heroism. They didn't call it war. They called it what it was. The day the galaxy froze, when a human warship darkened the sky of death itself and didn't blink. And in the ashes of extinction, humanity earned its place. Not by being feared, but by being willing to fall first, so the others didn't have to.